Welcome everybody to the Gratitude Era podcast. This is your host Andy Tran, and I'm joined here today by my good friend Stephen Crane. Now Stephen and I met a few years ago when he was getting married to his beautiful wife Heather, and I was lucky enough to be a part of their big day as their DJ. It was an amazing time full of love, laughter, and happy memories. Now Stephen joins us today under a more unfortunate circumstance to discuss the passing of his father Larry just 9 short months ago, and his struggles with the grieving process. So without further delay, Stephen, welcome to the show. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks so much for having me. I think we're both, I'm kind of like the guinea pig here, being one of your first, or if not the first person. So I appreciate, before we get started, I do appreciate you kind of letting me join and just kind of talk about Dad and what I've been going through. And hopefully people who are listening, can find at least a little bit of comfort and that someone else is, going through similar things or whatnot, or maybe some of the solution or some of the things I've done helps them. So I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm doing good. We were talking before the show. It's getting a little warmer here in Toronto, and with the sun kind of setting later, it's brighter out for longer. So it's kind of the spring and summer is coming, which is nice.
That's fantastic, man. It's always, good weather always brings the best out of everybody.
For sure.
I want to thank you back as well, for coming on the show. And, letting me know, like when I made that post asking if anyone had a story they wanted to share. And it takes a lot of courage and vulnerability to open up about your struggles. And you are definitely the first one that I'm recording. So, that's very special to me too. So I hope this goes well, and I hope really it helps people.
Cool. Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
So let's start by talking about your dad, Larry, the man.
Sure.
So describe the person that he was and a little bit about your relationship growing up.
For sure. So I'm from like a pretty small family. Like it was really just kind of my parents, and my brothers, and one of my brothers is married with a daughter. So pretty small. All my grandparents have passed away and stuff like that. And Dad, like as far as everything, like Dad, was like my hero. He was a great father, a great man, a great person to like look up to. He loved reading. I always joked with my friends that he could always kind of carry on a conversation. He always knew a little bit about something, or he knew a little bit about everything, basically. He would be able to carry on a conversation, whether it was my friends who were kind of into sports, he'd be able to talk to them about that. Mm-hmm. If it was about like music or, philosophy or anything like that, like he was just able to kind of talk about that. And I always joke, like my house growing up was kind of the house that, we had a lot of parties and stuff like that. I didn't really allow people to drink in my house, but everyone came over to kind of play Halo and Smash Brothers back in the day. And so I always joke that my parents were kind of like the parents that didn't really have enough kids, even though they had 3 kind of giant, at least 6'6" kids. Yeah. They could have probably had a couple more just with how they treated kind of, everyone in their life. So he was a great father, and, someone that I think all 3 of it, like my brothers, we kind of all try to live up to and try to have as much an influence from him as possible in our lives.
For sure, man. He sounded like he was really well liked, right? Especially as he, tried to connect with people a lot about different things that they were into. Like, you mentioned the sports and whatever else, the things they was reading. So that's a great quality. And I'm glad that you had a strong role model in your life, growing up, because a lot of people aren't lucky enough to have that, right? So
for sure, I'm very I'm very grateful for having like the type of father that I had. And I remember talking to my brother like shortly after he passed, like it's because of the man he was why it was so difficult. Like
sure, man.
He was such a great father and great person that when he passed we weren't all ready, and that just made it like more difficult, because it's just like, no, we all wanted to spend more time with him. We all felt like we had something more to learn from him.
Of course, man, for sure. When you think back on him now, is there any fond memories, any memories in particular that jump out?
The story I always like to bring up, just because the arcades aren't really a thing anymore. You remember, like in mall, yeah, you would go in, you would have a bunch of quarters, and you go play that X-Men or that Simpsons game or whatever. And so one of the common things we would do, we would go to the mall, and he would just give me kind of a couple of dollars in quarters and play some games and stuff like that. And that would be his escape to go to the bookstore because he was always just trying to get to a bookstore, and just buy books and stuff. And it was like his way of, it's funny because the fond memory isn't us actually together. Like it's me playing games and him like reading books, but it's something that I always look back upon. And it kind of carried on even into, into like high school and stuff like that. Like we would go to I would go to the Palladium and he would still go to the chapters and stuff like that. Like it was always funny how he would try to squeeze in a bookstore in every single visit, whether it's driving me back to Guelph where I went to school, or just us taking kind of a day trip to Barrie to go to chapters, or just in Toronto. He knew, all the kind of hidden bookstores that were around the city and stuff. And even though he hadn't lived in Toronto since like 1994, like he just still knew about all these different bookstores. And so it's always that whenever I see like a bookstore or library, I kind of get a little smirk or a smile because I know Dad had probably visited that one at some point.
That's awesome, man. He must have quite the book collection then, eh?
Yeah, that's one of the things. So when I was in high school, I think he had about like 5,000 or 6,000 books.
Wow.
In our house, yeah. And then as time went on, it kind of slowly, not withered away, I guess. Like, Mom kind of forced him to sell some of the ones that he wasn't using and stuff like that. And even now that he's passed, it's been like 9 or 10 months since he passed. Like, we still have a bunch of his books, even though like we've had friends and ourselves kind of just go through his book collection to kind of pick the ones that we want, and we've donated a bunch. It's going to be like a never-ending journey, I think, with that. Like,
now, do you remember what some of his favorite books were?
Favorite books, I'm not really sure. He always did like to tell me. I know he really liked philosophical books and like kind of science fiction stuff like that. Like he even had books when he was like from when he was a kid that he kind of just like let us read. Like is it the Hardy Boys, I think, was one of them, where it was like a detective, like two like kids that were detectives or whatever. I remember like reading those books from whenever he was a kid, like in the 60s. And so I don't know about favorite. I don't know what his like overall favorite book was, but he definitely preferred like philosophical and science fiction and kind of mystery novels.
That's awesome, man. Anything else you'd like to share about your dad before we move on?
No, I mean he I joked when I posted on Instagram the day after he passed away, just to let everyone know. I said that he loved his books, he loved his family, and he loved his stamps, and I would often joke that it was in that order. So he certainly had the things that he really loved, and thankfully for all of us, like his family was one of those things. But we would always tease him that his books kind of trumped us. And I even joke because Stephen Crane, which is my full name, is like a famous author.
That's right.
And so we always joked that I was named after an author, so you could squeeze in like one more literary reference.
Probably, yeah.
Very possible. I'm sure it went through his mind. He said no. He always claimed no, but I'm sure it was in his mind when that name was picked.
Had to have been.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so let's talk about the day that he passed away and the sudden nature of the loss of your dad. I know it's going to be tough, but can you talk me through the day that he passed away and like the first little bit afterwards as you started your grieving process?
For sure, yeah. So he, like 12 years ago, he had a stroke. So he wasn't, and he had kind of dealt with like high blood pressure and stuff for most of my life, but he was fine for over a decade. Relatively speaking, for a 60 to 70-year-old man. And then in February of last year, he went to the hospital for 3 weeks just with like shortness of breath and stuff like that. And they never really did kind of find out what happened, but he was kind of in and out of the hospital. I think since February to July when he passed away, he was in the hospital for a total of 5 weeks on 3 separate occasions. And the third time he passed away in the hospital. So the day he died, I got the call from Mom, and I knew, you just kind of know, and I knew something was up because I was getting a call at like 7 in the morning or 7:30, and it was from like Mom and Dad, like it was from their cell phone, not from like the house. So as soon as I saw it, I knew what was up. I was the first to find out. Mom couldn't get a hold of because I have one brother who lives in Owen Sound, which is where he was.
Okay.
So she couldn't get a hold of my two other brothers, so she got a hold of me first. And I think it's kind of funny. I don't know if I've really thought about the actual moment since it happened, but it certainly took me a little bit to kind of clue in what had happened. Because I had just spoken to him on the Saturday before. He left me a message saying that he had his cell phone and that I could call him or whatever. So I called him on the Saturday just to kind of talk to him. And it's funny because I don't even remember what I talked to him about on that Saturday before. And he passed away on the Tuesday. And but I think it took a little bit to hit me. Mom was telling me about it, but she wasn't, she was crying and was kind of incoherent. So I just said, we would just be up. We would be coming up. It's about a 3-hour drive. And then I managed to get in contact with my brothers. I told them. One of my other brother lives here in Toronto too. So we were both kind of just talking about how, when are we going to go up to Owen Sound, what time we're going to leave and stuff. So took care of things at work. It's, I think I did I'm pretty sure I broke down crying, just saying how
what point it was.
I think after I finished sort of the tasks, the immediate tasks that I had to do, I had to tell my two brothers and I had to email work, and I was carpooling at the time. So I had to just text my friend, say I'm not going in. And I think as soon as I kind of finished that, sorry, that's my dog barking in the background.
It's all good.
As soon as I kind of finished those tasks, that's, I think, I was still kind of in bed, and I think that's when I broke down, and just sort of let the emotions kind of take over.
Yeah.
And then, we left the house, I think because he was in the hospital, my wife was working kind of at a part-time job. And I had told my boss that, my dad was sick and, everything's, the worst could happen. So we didn't really have much to kind of close off there. It was pretty simple for us to just say, we're out, we're peacing out. I didn't really have much work to kind of pass off.
Okay.
So I think we just kind of packed for a week and we're kind of hitting the road before noon for sure. And my wife offered to drive, but I still kind of drove just because I wanted to kind of keep busy. I didn't want to just sit in the car, not doing anything, look at my phone or whatever, and just kind of stare into space and just think. At least in the moment, in those first few hours after I got the news, I feel like I just had to kind of keep busy, especially. I think the main focus is I just wanted to get to mom and just, make sure she was doing okay, give her a hug, tell her I love her, all that stuff.
For sure.
And just kind of help her with everything. That was my main task.
So how was mom?
She was, I think she was certainly, when I first spoke to her on the phone, she was, she was crying. I didn't even find out how he died. On that phone call. It wasn't until when I got up to her place that I found out, just because she wasn't really in a condition to kind of speak. And so I think, we weren't really and I remember even asking her if they had planned, if she had kind of talked to him about anything regarding him dying at that, in those last couple of weeks. And she didn't. So I don't think, although we all knew it was certainly a possibility, we weren't really planning for it. And so I think there was still a little bit of a shock there. It wasn't, even though he was in the hospital, even though he was older, even though they never really actually did officially figure out his condition, it was still a shock to everyone. And so, we're a small family, so it was just kind of let's just get everyone to the house, because it's just really it's me, my wife, my brother and his girlfriend, and then my brother and his wife and kid, and then my mom. And that's the family unit. So, and I have a cousin and an aunt and stuff like that, but they live far away. So, it was, So everyone was I think everyone was still in a shock that first day, even though it was, logically speaking, like it was certainly a very realistic possibility. And we kind of all knew that, but I think we were still kind of just taken back.
And how did and do you remember when that shock wore off, and how was it when you guys were when it wore off?
I think finally in the evening, I didn't really sleep much that week. And I think it was like kind of at night where I just sort of, I mean, I had multiple breakdowns, and I still do, during that week. But I think it was like finally at night, we were sleeping kind of in the basement in my old bedroom, and it was like quiet and whatnot. And that's really when it kind of like hit me.
Mm-hmm.
Then like when I woke up as well, because then I was just like, holy shit, it's been 24 hours. Like, this is the first day, the first full day that he's not here with us. And then, when like a death happens, you kind of have to kick it into gear about what you're going to do in terms of what to do with the body and stuff like that. And that was all planned and stuff, but we still had to kind of deal with all the logistics of it. But I think it was like in the evening and then the next morning when it really like hit me like a ton of bricks that he was like finally gone.
That's what they say. They say that we feel lost the most like at night before we go to bed, and we would wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
So that's definitely normal, and I'm sure all of you were feeling that together collectively, especially being in the house that you grew up in, right?
For sure, yeah. I mean, that was a house that I lived in since I was in grade 3, whatever age you are in grade 3, like 10 years old or whatever.
Yeah,
maybe younger. 8.
8. Yeah, 8.
Yeah, I think it was 94. So yeah, it would have been like 8 years old. Mm-hmm. So we had been in that house for like 8 years. It was the first time. I'm sure Mom had a hard time because that was the first time in 42 years, 41 years
mm-hmm.
that they didn't that they weren't sleeping in the same bed.
Mm-hmm.
My brothers are like 10 and 11 years older than me, so it was like 32 or 33 years for me, and it was like 40 years for them
mm-hmm.
without him. And so it was just it was tough, like that morning and afterwards.
No doubt, man, for sure. And I'm sorry to hear about the death of your father. And hopefully we can start unpackaging a few things here, and hopefully you feel better about it.
For sure.
But moving on, one of the main reasons that you wanted to come talk today was to discuss your agnostic views on the afterlife and how this has affected your grieving process. So what's your view on death right now, and what happens to us when we die? And has this view evolved over time for you, especially after the passing of your father?
So I grew up Catholic. Sorry, make a time note. I'm gonna pause. My dog came into the thing. I'm gonna just remove him. Sorry, give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. We'll just edit it out.
Yeah. Jack, I'm sorry. Come on. Sorry, we're babysitting my brother's dog.
It's all good.
Sorry,
you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, do you want to just repeat the question? That's where you can kind of edit back in.
Yeah, sure, man. Okay, so one of the main reasons that you wanted to come talk today was to discuss your agnostic views on the afterlife and how it's affected you with your grieving process. So what's your current view on death right now? What do you think happens to us when we die? And has this view evolved over time for you, especially after the passing of your father?
Yeah, so I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic school, but religion and faith have never really been like kind of a focus for me. So I always I remember I didn't even know like agnostic was kind of a word.
Mm-hmm.
I just always felt religion and whatnot and everything associated to it, the soul and afterlife and whatnot, really wasn't an interest to me. And that's not to say that I didn't have, I had some pretty heavily religious friends on both sides, both like people who were religious Catholic and both people who were like really hardcore atheists. But it was never really it wasn't really anything I thought about. When you die, that's just something that happens.
Mm-hmm.
and that's not to say I didn't have close people like, or people close to me pass away, like my grandparents passed away and stuff like that. But it kind of took a different, um, it made me think about it more after dad passed away, because it is, and I still haven't really found a solution, because it's like, for me, it's just like where is dad now?
Mm-hmm.
Like what's he doing right now? Is he, if I was atheist, if I really didn't believe in anything, I would just believe that, he was cremated. He's just a pile of ashes in like in an urn inside I forget what they're called, like the mausoleum or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And we have his memories, we have pictures of him and stuff like that, and that's dad now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really like truly believe that's all there is.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was very much religious, I would believe that he's up in heaven, he's chilling on a cloud reading a book, chilling with his parents, looking down on us,
Mm-hmm.
kind of guiding us in the way that's like spiritual, with like kind of, how people say, like, they felt like there was a presence around that kind of helped them within certain situations and stuff like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine for people who believe in that, but again, I can't, like, I don't strongly believe in that. So one of the hardest things I've had to kind of just deal with dad's passing, it's just like, I don't know where he is.
For
And
sure.
and there's no closure there. And I think that's important, and something that's going to take a while for me to kind of fully like realize just like what the status of him is.
For
And I think
sure.
it's important to get that closure, but 9 months later, I'm still not really there, and I'm still kind of tackling it.
Maybe you can find that closure in different ways, as opposed to looking for it in finding out where he is per se. I was reading an article earlier today as I was kind of researching this, and I read a lot about atheists and agnostic people. When they experience tragedy like this, they kind of come back into spirituality a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the flip side, there's people who are believers and like strong believers in God who run into a tragedy. Let's say their son was shot down in the street or something like that, like a really really tragic death. Sometimes at those times, those people can start reversing their faith and start like denouncing their faith, washing their hands of God per se, because how can God really allow something like that?
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
so it's a very interesting thing to think about it from both sides too. So yeah, just figured I'd throw that in. But how do you feel when people tell you things like your dad is watching over you, or like God has a plan for him and for all of us?
I'm always appreciated, because that's that's like what they believe in. And I'm of the belief, like, that people can believe whatever they want, um as long as you don't hurt anyone
Mm-hmm.
in whatever you kind of believe. Like, you're welcome to be Christian, Catholic, atheist, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you don't hurt anyone in those with those beliefs. And so when people, I've had religious people kind of tell me those similar lines, God has a plan, he's in a better place, um he's up there with grandma and grandpa, and all this stuff. It I just take it as like simple condolences, the same as like when someone says, like, I'm very sorry for your loss,
Mm-hmm.
my condolences, thoughts, and like, your families, and you're thinking about your family in this difficult time, all that stuff. I kind of just like group them all together as
Mm-hmm.
people just kind of um thinking about dad and thinking about us. And that's really what kind of that's what kind of helps. It's not really the religious aspect of it. It's just that, even for 1 second of one moment of one day, someone kind of thought of dad and thought of us.
For
and
sure.
and that means more than them, even if they think like that's like God is a thing, and dad's chilling in with heaven, or in
Mm-hmm.
heaven with God. It's the fact that they thought of dad, and that his legacy kind of carries on a little bit like that. Even, obviously the three of us and my mom will carry on dad's legacy, but when other people think about it, it means a lot to me.
For sure. And I think it's a great way to look at it. And I think it's always important to realize and know when things are coming from a good place.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to hear that, you're taking something that you don't necessarily believe positively in stride.
Yeah. Yeah, I know like people can kind of get angry when it comes to like how they how they handle death and stuff like that. And there's
Mm-hmm.
certainly been times where like it's at the most random times where it happened actually today when I was jogging, and I just thought like this is so unfair, etc. And there's been times where I kind of just wish I could go into a room and just like flip tables and stuff like that, but
Uh-huh.
I've never have done it. And because I'm just not really that type of person to kind of raise my voice and yell, even though my big stature might say otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I feel like some people might like if someone's I feel like if someone's like an atheist or strongly religious on one thing, and then someone kind of the reverse opposite of that religion says something along those lines in a similar aspect, there might be some like kind of anger there. But
Yeah.
I've never had that myself, where it's just like, thank you for thinking of dad, basically.
That's good, man. That's good. It's very zen of you. You know, it's very, focusing on what's important, the bigger picture.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what has helped when it comes to support from other people,
Um,
besides the religious connotations?
yeah, kind of similar to what I was saying in terms of just like like having other people think of dad. Like when he passed away, I went on like an Instagram like spamming session where I
Mm-hmm.
just would just keep posting pictures of dad. I have like his story, like a story. You know how you can like save a story
For sure. Mm-hmm.
and like archive it or whatever. And so I have like a archive story called Dad, where I just kind of I've posted different pictures and stuff. Obviously, like, when someone passes away, you kind of look back on all the different pictures and stuff. So we found a bunch from like the 70s and 80s
Mm-hmm.
with him, and I just kind of went on a spree of just kind of sharing all of these with Dad. And I think that's one of the good things with social media, where it's just like I was saying, like people like those photos and stuff like that. And I know some people might scoff at this idea, but it really is just kind of like for a few moments. And I'm not trying to like grab a sympathy votes or anything like
Of
that, but it's
course.
just like for a few moments, someone thought of Dad. They saw a picture of Dad. One of my favorite pictures of him is my first Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm born in September, so I was like 3 months old,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in my grandparents, his parents' house, their old house, and he got this book, and he just has this giant smile on his face, and he's just so happy about this book, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
I posted that on Instagram. It's like one of my favorite photos
Mm-hmm.
of him, and it gets a bunch of likes, and you wouldn't think getting a bunch of likes on a photo would like mean so much, but it kind of does. Where you're just like, I had a bunch of people like that photo. I just looked it up. 31 people liked it, and I don't have many followers, so like,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of I was just like, like 31 people saw that, and kind of maybe they got a chuckle out of it because like it's a typical 80s photo. Like he has a mustache, and you can like there's beer on the counter right beside it and stuff like that. So it's very very obviously a pretty old photo or whatever, and the drapes behind him like look like they're straight out of the 70s and stuff. So it's a pretty classic photo, and so just things like that where anytime I can try to like whether force it or just sort of like by just posting it, like I can get someone to kind of think of Dad for a couple of moments.
For sure. For sure.
That has helped. That's probably been one of the biggest things in terms of like just keeping on his legacy, I guess, just like making sure that he's not like forgotten.
For sure, man. And there's some amazing things about social media, right? Especially when it comes down to the aspects of human connection
Yeah,
and how we all connect with each other and how we, all celebrate each other's great moments, but then we're all there to like spread the sadness as well, right? When you're going through tragedy. So I'm happy that that helped you.
yeah. I just because I don't know if you're on Reddit much.
A
This is
little
a little
bit.
bit of a tangent, but so there's a Toronto Raptors subreddit,
Mm-hmm.
and someone posted a photo of one of his cousin, I think, passed away, and at the funeral there was like a Toronto Raptors like painting or something like that, and he just was just like, rest in peace to a fellow hardcore Toronto Raptors fan.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone, most people give their condolences, whatever, but there was one dude who's just like, in Reddit, you get like karma for upvoting, getting a bunch of upvotes. So someone was just like, "Oh, this is just karma whoring or something." And people were like yelling at him. It was just like,
Yeah, for sure.
let me explain what I think this guy is doing, because this is what I was doing when dad passed away. Just like, sure, you get upvotes or whatever, but that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it just to kind of get other people, even if it's complete strangers on the internet, to just think about your friend, your cousin, your dad, whatever, to think, like, to get strangers to think about them.
Sure.
It goes a long way.
There's always that one troll though, eh?
Yeah, exactly. There's always one dude, but I was just like, maybe it's almost impossible to change someone's mind on the internet. But I was just like, maybe I can change this dude's mind. But then he like,
Well, you had his back too, right? So I'm sure he appreciated that.
yeah, I had people like reply afterwards, just like, yo, that kind of makes sense. And I'm like, I don't know if the guy cares to read it or whatever. He might just be a troll, but who knows? If I can kind of give one person a little insight into what someone who's grieving might post on social media or on Reddit or whatever, then I've helped. So that's definitely helped a lot.
For sure, man. So after the passing of your father, like, how do you think that this affected how you live your life today and for the rest of your days? How do you feel like it changed?
It it certainly gets me thinking more. The last thing I ever really wanted though was it to affect the relationship I have with my wife or my my mom or my brothers or whatever, like or like my relationship with friends or just at work. But it's almost impossible for it not to. There's days where we might make plans to go for a walk or go out to dinner or something like that, and there's days where I'm just like, no, I just don't feel like doing it. And so it can certainly be tough in that regard. But at the end of the day, I think no matter what you kind of believe, what you will have is just like memories. And while there's certainly like a lot of, I certainly get like upset and sad and crying and whatnot. There's times where, I look at that photo or whatever, I think of good times and gets a little smile on your face and you just kind of have to like truck on. So, yeah, it's, it's certainly tough. It's much harder than I thought it would be as well.
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, there's no real way to prepare for things like this, right?
No, and like I said, he had a stroke like 12 years ago. He was first hospitalized when I was in grade 5 or 6. He had a very stressful job. He worked a very well-paying but highly stressful job just so he can take care of his family. But that caused some health issues. I think he was in the hospital 2 or 3 times before his stroke, then his stroke. So like 4 times both within 10 years or so.
What did he do for work?
He worked at Bruce Power. So back home, like Bruce Power was like, yeah, exactly. And he was like, how in grade 9 you do that like take your kid to work day thing?
Yeah.
So when I did that, he was like on the team that was responsible for, I guess they're like, because there was 2 power plants, they were kind of decommissioning one of them and moving stuff over. So he was like on the team to like decommission the one plant and move everything over. He was like a manager. But I don't really know the specifics of like the day-to-day specifics to his job. But he was an engineer. He was a surveyor out of school and an engineer out of school. And then I think as time went on, that kind of developed into kind of like a manager of engineers and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so just going back to the agnostic thing.
Yeah.
Have you tried reaching out to like other agnostic? I know you said you have some friends who are agnostic, some atheists as well, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had to support them in a loss that they've had maybe in their life? And have you had discussions on different theories about, things like this, dealing with grieving while being agnostic, being an atheist? Have you had that dialogue?
Not when it comes to like other people's grieving. I've certainly talked to quite a few people, both religious and not, when it comes to dad. Like I work with a few people in India, so I remember talking to them about it, just like as off the cuff, just like, hey, like I didn't even know. I was just like, what do you believe in terms of like the afterlife? I have a friend who's pretty hardcore like Catholic, and I remember talking to him. Like his dad's a priest, and I remember talking to him quite a bit about it. And one of my best friends is, he's like atheist, borderline agnostic, and I just talked to him about it too. Like he was actually probably one of the first people, like outside my wife, that I would kind of talk to about this sort of stuff. And like, you always feel bad because like everyone you talk to, because like, you talk to like your friends and your family and stuff, like they immediately just want to help you. Like they want to give you advice and they want to tell you what they think and stuff, but then they always just feel bad because right afterwards they're just like, I'm sorry, like I wish I could help. And I'm like, no, like this is helping. Like you just being like, this kind of comes up with my wife quite a bit, where it's just like you just being around like helps. You don't have to like solve the great mystery of life like for me. But just having these conversations, that's why I kind of agreed to like talk to you about Dad, just because like having these conversations is like, how I've been grieving, or how I've kind of been grieving.
It's kind of like therapy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To get it off your chest.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not, I don't think it's good to bottle that stuff up. And so I've never, I don't go to them for specific answers. I just go to them to just kind of learn like what they think. Because like I said, like before, even though like close people had passed away, like my grandparents, like it was just, death was not a thing that I really thought about on really any level. And other than like a few kind of grandparents, like I didn't really know anyone that kind of died who was young. And I think like that was one of the things, like even though Dad was 72 or 73 when he passed away, like I still relatively young. And we all thought that he had more time. So that was like the first, like, I think that's part of it, where it's just like, no one I knew that passed like sparked this kind of like these conversations for me in the past.
For sure, man. It's one of those life lessons, right? One of those really important ones. And I would agree. Like I think that's an early death, and I think it was very sudden. I mean, I'm sure there was still a lot more life that he wanted to see, and a lot more of your life that you wanted him to see as well. So
yeah, like
very difficult.
Because he passed away less than a year after the wedding. And the wedding, I think I even messaged you asking if you had any photos, if you managed to grab any photos of him, just because like the wedding was kind of the last time he the last like gathering with everything,
with everyone was all together.
And even still to this day, like my phone display picture is my wife and my dad kind of hugging each other
at your
from
wedding.
The wedding. Just because it's like that's like everything to me, that photo. Like everything to me is in that photo. So
that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely look through my archives and I'll see if I can find something from her for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we were talking about it a little while ago. So I mean, it's fine. You don't have to break the bank.
It's still somewhere. I mean, I back up everything on Dropbox anyway, so I'm pretty sure I can go back and see if I got anything. I hope I did. I was pretty busy that day, but I'm sure I snapped a few photos. I definitely snapped a photo of your cake. Your cake was amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it was like a Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, like the 3-tier Legend of Zelda cake or something like that.
Yeah,
like that's my favorite cake of all time. I haven't seen anyone better than that since then.
Certainly getting off topic, but we messed up with that cake because we didn't really cut it until like way later, and not enough people ate it. So when it came to the end of the night, we had like legit like 3/4 of that cake left.
So you probably saved a little bit too, right? I guess for like the whole good luck in your freezer thing after a year.
That's what people do. I don't know. Do people still do that? We didn't actually do that. We just tried to eat it as much as we could. We got through quite a bit of it. We didn't actually save it though. I don't know.
Yeah, we saved that's good too.
I'm pretty sure we saved the characters at the top. Like
that's awesome. Yeah, no, those they were amazing. I remember taking like 50 pictures of that cake for sure. So if you want pictures of that cake, I definitely got pictures of that cake. Okay, so just moving on, back on topic. Do you think about what the meaning of life is and like why we're here? Does that thought ever cross your mind?
It certainly didn't before Dad. It kind of has afterwards. Just thinking more so about Dad's legacy, like what he did during his time as as a father, as a husband, as a man. And you know, the legacy that he'll kind of continue. Like, I want to make sure that I remember him, you know, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 40 years from now. One of the hardest things has been that, you know, we all remember Dad. You know, we're all like 30 and above. My brothers, my wife, and all of us, the family. But my niece is only 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back to like when my grandmother passed away when I was in grade 9, and I'm like shit, I don't really remember her that
Mm-hmm.
much. Like we saw a bunch of photos of her because of Dad, like photos of just her with Dad and stuff. And I was just like, oh man, I barely remember like what she looks like, and that brought a lot of pain to me. Where I was just like, shit, my niece won't is going to forget about her papa basically.
Mm-hmm.
She's only 5, so it's like. And she like carries around a photo of him and stuff like that. It's pretty heartbreaking sometimes.
Yeah.
Just see her grieve in her own way, and I'm sure that's a whole another thing with her. But in terms of like the meaning of life and stuff, I think it's just like be good, like just be a good person. And that's not that I really thought much about the meaning of life before, but that's what I've kind of always done because that's just what Dad kind of taught me.
And that's who he was too.
Yeah, exactly. And so because of that, you know, that's why I think. Have you ever watched the movie Coco?
Is that the cartoon?
Yeah, it's like a Day of the Dead
Oh yeah,
cartoon.
yeah. I've seen that one. Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so the whole thing with that movie is that you basically have to have pictures to kind of remember the dead, and
Yeah.
if they're forgotten, then they kind of disappear or whatever like that. So
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of been like that, where it's just like, you know, be good while you're here, and then like do enough that you're kind of remembered, and that the lessons, you know, I still want the lessons that he taught me, you know, I would want to pass down to my kid. And, you know, I'm sure my brother, the lessons that Dad has taught him, like he would want to kind of reflect that in his own daughter. And I think that's kind of like, I think that everyone we get better. Like each generation kind of gets better because you're just like learning from the best from before. And he was certainly one of the best.
That's right. And to me, at least, it sounds like he lived a very full life. You know, where he had a loving family. You know, he had his kids. You know, he had his hobbies. He was able to teach you guys a lot, and I'm sure he put his footprint into this world.
For sure.
Right. So hopefully you could find comfort over time that, you know, that you don't need to be hanging on to his legacy too much, because his legacy is set in stone.
Yeah.
If you ask me. So hopefully that helps. Have you explored other theories on the afterlife? I know you mentioned to me yesterday that you were going to go visit a temple soon. Yeah, so have you looked into other things, you know, such as, you know, like there's the Christian way, there's, you know, the idea of reincarnation. And I read earlier today about an article about, you know, atheist people believing in energy. And there's that theory that, you know, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's just transferred into something else, right? So whether you're buried and, you know, you disintegrate back into the earth, or whatnot, or your energy, you know, spiritually moves on to another being as well, you know. So it's a bunch of different theories. And has this experience prompted you to look into these a little bit more?
I think just from not reincarnation and stuff, mostly because I don't know people who personally believe that.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that I kind of like researched in terms of like looking online or joining some sort of chat on or going Reddit or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
The quote unquote research that I did was just kind of talking to people of different afterlives. And yeah, I was mentioned because I spoke to my doctor about it, because I do feel like there's certainly like some depression going on with me with Dad, and you know, just asking her for advice and stuff. I'm pretty and she mentioned like the Buddhist temple that's kind of like near my hood.
Yeah.
So I was going to hit that up, you know, just to kind of learn a little bit, because even though like, yeah, before Dad, like religion wasn't really a thing I ever thought about. It's certainly, and it's not even like religion itself. It's just really the afterlife that has got me thinking. So certainly in reincarnation, stuff like that and whatnot, but like the other aspects, I don't know if I'm as kind of, interested in. I really just the question that I think I'll be asking myself for a long, long, long time is like, where is dad now?
For sure.
And I don't know if I'll ever get an answer.
Well, I mean, considering your dad used to love to read so many books, right? And he must have, especially philosophy books too. Seems like he had like a very inquisitive mind, right? Like he was always trying to learn. So who knows? Maybe you find your answer in a book one day. All right. Or
That's true.
I mean, especially like when you go visit the temple too, like, I'm sure they can teach you a thing or two about reincarnation as well if you're curious about it.
Yeah, I don't know how I was going to handle the temple. I might just like go there just to see what's up. I don't really know how you can maybe like help me out.
For sure,
we can do like off podcast just in terms of like what to even expect when I go there. Like, because I just haven't like I probably actually will do it this weekend, but
cool, man.
But it's I think it's part of like how dad always wanted to kind of learn and get like be smarter and stuff like that. That's sort of like what I've been doing in terms of the afterlife and grieving and whatnot, like just trying to like figure out what's up. And he wanted to read, he did that by reading and stuff, and I've just been kind of trying to talk to people.
For sure. Yeah, connecting.
Yeah, sorry, my dog's barking in the background.
Yeah, it's okay. But yeah, we can definitely talk offline about what to expect when you visit the temple and stuff like that, so we'll definitely touch base about that soon. But wrapping up then, let's do you have any advice for anyone who may be in a similar situation with you right now, or maybe dealing with the upcoming loss of a parent, maybe a parent who's probably sick or something? What would you tell them?
I would like if it's someone who isn't really strongly religious, I would maybe kind of have them like prepare them that they might start taking more of an interest in it. Because typically people who are not religious don't really think about it. But for me, what's helped is just like talking about dad, sharing stories about dad, posting photos on Instagram, and just like talking about other people's like, another like belief is that dad's in multiple places. And when I talk to someone who believes in reincarnation, like dad's now been reincarnated. But if I talk to someone who's Catholic, it means that he's in heaven. And if I talk to someone who's atheist, it means that he's, the energy has kind of been transferred. So like he could be in multiple places. And I think that's what's helped out the most, where it's just like a lot of these people, like we don't know the answer, and we never will.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of prepare yourself for that. I'm probably going to be asking this question to myself for the rest of my life.
For sure.
And thinking about dad for the rest of my life, which in a way is a good thing because it means I'll remember him, but in a way it's a bad thing because I don't think I've ever had a problem.
Because it affects you too.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and I don't think there's ever been a problem I've had that lasted my entire lifetime. So, I would just say like find the people that mean the most to you, and kind of just talk to them. My wife has been amazing during this whole process. My brothers, my mom, friends. I know some people out there might be a little more not reclusive when it comes to like speaking about these things, but it's certainly like helped me out a lot. And like I said, they'll always want to try to help you out more, and they'll feel bad that they can't just suddenly solve my problems. But so you have to kind of like tell them like, no, I'm not expecting you to like revive my dad.
For sure.
But it means the world that like these people are kind of here and want to help out and stuff like that. So that's what I've found. That's what I found has helped the most.
Well, I hope you continually get that love and support, that you need as you continue to go through this, right? Because, no one wants to see you, struggling with depression and being affected by this much longer, right? So, but not to sound preachy to finish and stuff like that, but, just from my, what I've learned in Buddhism going like throughout my entire life and through my studies and stuff like that is I hope that one day you can find the comfort in the idea that we will never know, maybe, and just, maybe accepting that fact. Acceptance is a very big Buddhist principle, as well as the ability to let go and detach. And that's also, a very, very long process too, right? And it requires a lot of like self-reflecting and looking within and meditation if you're into meditation. But we can definitely talk offline about this kind of stuff, but it boils down to very very simple pillars, if I may, when it comes to Buddhism. So detachment would be one of them, and acceptance would definitely be another one. So I really hope throughout your journey that you achieve these, because I really believe that these will find you the peace that you're looking for, and the peace of moving on from all this. And but moving on doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to forget, right? I mean, moving on is just moving on with your life.
Yeah.
And that's what I really hope for you.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, no worries. So, before we go, is there anything you want to plug, like your website, the Game Devs website, or your Instagram or anything like that? You can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. If you I'm on Instagram at just Stephen L. Crane. Actually, maybe Stephen L. Crane 8. But if you're a gamer, if you're listening to this and you're a gamer, I run a website called CanadianGameDevs.com. It's just a site dedicated to kind of the games created in Toronto and the people who make them. Just kind of giving a little bit of love for the Canadian, developers and artists and all that stuff. So you can check it out. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitch, things like that. It's sort of my side hustle. So CanadianGameDevs.com.
It's awesome, man. So again, I just want to thank you so much for your time, and for speaking so openly and so intimately with me about this. And we'll definitely keep in touch, man.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate kind of being, like I said, the first one to kind of do this podcast. Like I look forward to like kind of the other episodes and who else you get on. And I always appreciate people giving me the time to talk about dad and stuff. So I hope if there's someone listening to this, I hope like at least someone has thought about dad a little bit, but maybe also someone, like you said, someone who's been grieving or kind of coming up to an event like this, that my experiences have even helped them a little bit, and I think that's sort of like the best thing I can do for dad. So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no worries, man. Anytime.